parents would say things like, how come you're not teaching young people about vaping and why vaping is a really negative thing? And there's this part of you that goes, those conversations can also happen at home. But it just becomes this ongoing expectation that we do more and more in terms of a young people's, not just their educational development, but their mental health and wellbeing and that side of things.
What happens if we're not managing the workload, if we're not managing expectations, is burnout. It's not sustainable. We simply can't stay in the profession. And so what's losing out is not only our career and our contribution, but also the young people are losing the opportunity to learn and grow with us.
Yes, we have this issue, but before to even address that, we need to understand what causes it. So what causes these mixed match of expectations and workload?
Podcast acknowledges the true and traditional custodians of the land we meet on here today, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. We pay our respect to elders past and present and are grateful to be on this country.
So no one told you teaching was gonna be this way. Your lesson plans are jokes, your patience broke, you're feeling in disarray. It's like you're always stuck in report writing, when it hasn't been your day, your week, your month, or even your school year. But I'll be here for you.
When the students start to riot,
I'll be here for you.
even if your coffee's gone cold,
I'll be here for you, 'cause you're there for them too.
Hello and welcome back to Podcast. We are so excited to be with you, and this is the one about managing workloads and expectations. My name's Will. I'm here with my friends. Who are you?
Hello, I'm Amanda.
I'm Will's friend, Sky. Hi, nice to be with you.
If we're friends, you can call me Wilson.
Sorry, you were just saying something off air and I feel like it needs to come into the podcast for our audience.
Could be. I said so many things in that short amount of time.
Will was just saying that he really wants to get a second dog. Now, for everyone who's listening, what you should know is that Will currently has a first dog. Will lives in Sydney. Will's dog lives in Perth. And so Will does literally nothing to look after said dog, sees said dog on very, very rare occasions, and he's saying he would like to get a second dog.
And this is why I'm becoming a lobbyist on why dogs should be allowed on aeroplanes in the normal part.
And you know what? I actually think this ties in really well with our episode today because we need to be managing our workloads and expectations, Wilson. And I just don't think this is realistic for you right now.
I honestly, okay, fair. Little Rufus. We'll have to wait a little while.
Devastated. All right, so we are talking about managing workloads and expectations. Why is this important? Well, we know that there are so many challenges in the education. They've absolutely lost it about this dog.
I think it's because you told your child also, Rufus.
Yeah, for those of you playing along at home that know that I'm pregnant, Will has been calling my unborn child, of which we are not finding out the sex of our baby until it is born, but Will has been calling it Rufus. So
just called your little dog his Rufus. Dog's name. Sorry.
Okay, back to the episode.
The one about managing workloads and expectations.
So there's this kind of unique challenge, right, in the teaching and the education space. Teachers have a really significant workload, and finding balance between looking after their wellbeing, their home life, their school life can be a real struggle. And it's really important to understand how we can best support and manage our workloads, but also having really realistic expectations of ourselves and of others that we work with.
And how we communicate that, because I think that it's a two-way street, right? Nobody's going to know unless you say something or you bring it up. And that's probably been more of a journey that I've been on as being part of a larger team in the last 12 months than I've been on in any other time.
Yeah. And I think as well, it just is even more important in the context of so many people don't understand the role of a teacher. And like the fact that it's 2025 and we'll still hear comments like, oh, is it really hard to photocopy worksheets and only work 9 till 3 and get 3 months off a year?
Have you tried using a printer?
It is infuriating. And we know that teaching and education is the list literally never ends. Like there is a quiet period between Christmas and New Year's where you possibly don't think about teaching, and outside of that, it never leaves you.
As there should be. That's with every job. There's a quiet period typically in that sense. But even then, teachers are often still thinking about their students or wondering how that young person's going that they had a conversation with before school ended. Like, it really does not stop.
And the thing that we often talk about within WILA in the context of programs is like, yes, we have this issue, but before to even address that, we need to understand what causes it. So what causes these mixed match of expectations and workloads?
Yeah, and it's a really great point. To understand, I guess, the core of the issue and where that comes from in education, there's a few different components of it. One is that teachers are often wearing multiple hats. They're not just a teacher. The expectation of what we perform on a day-to-day basis has only increased over time. So it's not just about teaching our class content now. It's the administrative load. It's marking. It's being a mentor for students. It's being a wellbeing support person. It is being an administrator. You operate as a counsellor. Like, there are so many facets of education. I remember I used to work as a coordinator, and I've been in a whole bunch of different roles in schools, but used to receive phone calls from parents, and parents would say things like, how come you're not teaching young people about, I don't know, vaping and why vaping is a really negative thing? And there's this part of you that goes, those conversations can also happen at home. But it just becomes this ongoing expectation that we do more and more and more in terms of a young people's, not just their educational development, but their mental health and well-being and that side of things.
I remember being a nanny when I was studying education, and one of the young boys I was looking after, he was in year 2. And I remember his mum got home one night and she checked his lunchbox, which I had been doing his homework with him and activities, so I hadn't unpacked the lunchbox yet. And it was around 6 p.m. and she'd found that he hadn't drunk his chocolate milk in his lunchbox. And she said to him, why didn't you drink your chocolate milk? And he was like, he's like, 8, 9. He's like, I don't know, I didn't want it. And she turns to me and she says, why isn't the teacher making sure he consumes all of his lunchbox? I'm emailing the teacher right now. And before my very eyes at 6 p.m, she emailed the teacher and said, it is absolutely critical that he drinks his chocolate or milk, consumes his milk every day. Please make sure it's not sent home. And I'm like,
and this is it, right? And
these are the external. This is a true story. And so it's like, yes, it's also managing the external pressures, whether that be parents who I think are expecting more, demanding more than ever before, and also more involved than ever before. And I think email and all the online platforms that we utilize, whatever your school uses, creates that as well. Also pressures from leadership, and I think demand and pressure on leadership to perform is so high that trickles down into our teaching workforce as well.
And we also have internal pressure, because I know that none of us became a teacher because we work from 9 till 3 and have 12 weeks of holidays. Like, you become a teacher because you want to see young people succeed and you want to support them. So with that also comes this internal pressure to make sure that you are doing the best job that you can do. And it often means that you can be really self-critical in that space and think, I'm not doing enough and all this kind of thing. And we'll get to it. But that idea of, done is better than perfect is like something we have to adopt in the teaching space, because we're never going to meet, like, we are always going to have the highest expectations on ourselves, and we need to acknowledge that.
And I think, this conversation is super important, and we have to manage our workload and our expectations, because if we don't, as it is, we're in a teacher shortage. Like, we are all teachers for a reason. That passion for young people for change is within us always. And what happens if we're not managing the workload, if we're not managing expectations, is burnout. And it's not sustainable. We simply can't stay in the profession. And so what's losing out is not only our career and our contribution, but also the young people are losing the opportunity to learn and grow with us.
So it's like, it's not all, I don't think it's all bad news, because there is an opportunity to...
Not all doom and gloom.
It's not all doom and gloom, because there is an opportunity to shift it. And if we don't, which I'm sure we're about to go into, but like, if we don't start taking up some of these strategies, the other side of it is, well, you're going to be overworked and tired for the rest of your life / career.
And it is. And it's kind of that circle of control thing as well. It's like, well, what can we control? And there are some things that we can do to help us with our workloads and help us manage those workloads a lot more effectively.
So it's week 1 of term 1. You might as well get it sorted this week.
Get on top of it.
Start the year off strong.
And like, it's something great you have to come back to. I know there's times of complete overwhelm as an educator, and I would literally have to remind myself of, and as simple as some of these strategies may sound, I had to literally remind myself, no, this is effective. this works, this is going to help me feel better in my role, and in the long term will have a really great effect on my well-being as well, and therefore my job satisfaction and enjoyment. So one of the first things that we can do is
prioritization. And it sounds so simple. We all know it, but like, do we actually do it? And it's in the actual doing of prioritization where the difference is made, triaging our tasks.
It's fine. I've only started recently doing it to a good level, and it's so much better.
Game changer.
I have high, medium, low, and then I actually have a high, medium, and spare time. And then I have this like ultra urgent, which I've used once.
Yeah, great. So if we look at our tasks that need doing, because the thing is if that to-do list is never ending. And if we let that consume us at every moment of every day, we're never tuning off. And then we're not the best selves for our students and for our teaching either. So looking at our list and going, well, what is really important? What is essential to the learning and the outcome of the students? And then prioritizing things down. And sometimes I know for me personally, it was always tempting to maybe prioritize a pretty display in the classroom when like it's nice, yes, but if our classroom's set up and it's resourced, like that's actually not a high priority when something else is a high priority, and we're absolutely not going to be able to shift that off our list.
in long term only adding to this.
Strongly, I disagree.
Say more?
I disagree because I have this. There's a lot of my work that is admin. There's a lot of work that is just boring stuff. And then there's that like little activity that's a little bit creative. Maybe it's making a new booklet for our events. Maybe it's something, maybe it's working on the website. And I save that for the afternoon, and it's a little bit of excitement that I look forward to.
Okay. We're not saying don't make pretty displays. We're saying if you have like 4 things that are absolute priority they need doing by Wednesday morning, and it's currently Monday, and then you spend your time after school Monday and Tuesday doing display, and then Tuesday night you're freaking out.
I will now.
Thanks, Wilson. We really appreciate that tick of approval on the prioritization of tasks.
So we're looking at prioritizing high impact tasks, but also not removing the joy. Never remove the joy. If there's something joyful that you want to save and get excited about, by all means, always.
At 9 p.m, I'm not doing admin.
and which fits really well into the next point, actually, what you just said. And that's like time blocking or allocating specific times for certain tasks and having really clear boundaries, which we've spoken about on the potty before, but having really clear boundaries as to when you do things. I used to have, like, teachers do get like periods or chunks of time in their day where it is allocated for like planning or whatever it is you need to do. And often that can be, a colleague's off in that same block as what you are in a secondary school setting. And it's so easy
tempting to just
lean into a conversation. And those things are great, but that was what I did on a Friday.
Yeah.
You know,
there's a creative little story,
right. But my like Monday to Thursday, that time that I had, I would pre-allocate that at the start of the week and go, well, I'm going to do this task then, and this is when I'm available. And I would just block that out for myself and stay really strict on it. Because the second I let one thing kind of budge in that, then everything had to move to accommodate for me not having completed that task.
Strategy number 3. Episode 28, my friends. The one about boundaries. The one about boundaries. Learn to say no.
Yes.
There is nothing more powerful to managing your workload and your how tired and exhausted you are than managing your own boundaries.
Yeah, and we've said it before and we'll say it again. It's that age-old thing of if you want something done, ask the busiest person. Well, if the busiest person starts saying no and starts implementing those boundaries, it's actually, it will get done. Someone else will take it on.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes I've experienced, and I had a conversation with a colleague today actually about it, was like my expectations were out of whack / not being met because I hadn't had a conversation of what I needed. For me, I need to know that there's a date that we're working towards or that there's a timeline so that my expectations can be managed. And it was like as simple as that, is like just having that conversation makes it so much easier.
Which is awesome. And we need to be encouraging that way more in the school space as well. We often do operate or feel like we're operating in like this silo where we have to get stuff done and other people aren't aware of our workloads. So communicating that's really, really essential. That done is better than perfect thinking is something I encourage everyone to adopt. It's literally changed my productivity so much. And also this idea that if something doesn't have to be reworked, rewritten, redesigned, whatever it might be, but you're still feeling that teacher guilt, which is such a real thing to kind of make your classes innovative or exciting, just focus on a small portion of it. Just change like the opener or the end or the picture that you're analysing or whatever it might be. And that gives you that dopamine, fresh sense of accomplishment in your class, but it's also reducing your workload in areas you don't need to be adding more stuff.
I also think we can consider how can technology support efficiency in getting things done. If we can, if something can be reduced by a third of the time or half of the time through using technology, let's go ahead and do that, because that other half time earned back is either time directly for us or it's fed back in for our students in quality resourcing and things like that.
So that's like a couple of hot tips and tricks that we can start reflecting on to manage our workloads. In order of how this looks practically, we need to set realistic expectations for ourselves. We can do this in 3 areas. We can do this with leadership, so being really clear on what our boundaries are and communicating those. And also, like Will just said, expressing our concerns when they come up. We can do this with parents and guardians by having an out of office on our email. Often schools have policies where you don't respond to emails, or you've got a 48-hour window to respond to an email. Use them. They're there for a reason. You do not need to reply immediately to things. And we also need to have realistic expectations with ourselves. We know our own needs. We need to accept that perfection is not always possible, or even it should be on the table. And we need to focus on growth, not perfection, and giving ourselves what we need.
Absolutely. And I think there's also so many innate support systems. Might not always feel like it, but there are so many innate support systems within a school system. We've got our administrative teams. We've got someone who supports with IT. We've got professional networks and colleagues around us. So let's think about, where can we leverage those systems? And not leverage in a self-indulgent way, of course, but leverage in a sense that makes us better equipped to serve our students and better equipped within ourselves.
Yeah.
And I guess the message that we want to leave you with is that to know that workload and managing it is a process and it's a learning journey, and it's about sustainability rather than burnout every few months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So looking after yourself is key in that. Have daily non-negotiables. Figure out what work-life balance means for you, because that is different for every person, based on our needs.
And I think
and ask for support when you need it.
Because we need you. Like, we need teachers.
Yep.
We need you more than ever. Our young people need you, and we need you well, and we need you feeling great, and we need that passion, and that can be really hard. And some days we've got to dig deep, and that's okay. But we can serve ourselves through managing expectations and managing workload. It serves us, which also serves our students.
Yeah, we can't give from an empty bucket, so make sure that yours is full. And one of the ways we can do that is by prioritizing those tasks, figuring out what managing our workload looks like for us, and managing our expectations with ourselves and others.
Friends, we are Podcast. Thank you so much. See you next week.
See you next week.
Bye.
I'll be here for you, 'cause you're there for them too.
Thanks so much for tuning into Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, we would adore it if you could go on to Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you listen to your podcasts, and leave us a review. 5 stars would be lovely. We would love to get this podcast into as many ears as possible, so we can help and support as many people as possible who help young people. And if you're not already doing so, please go along to Instagram and follow us at podclass.aus.